Afternoon, everyone. Welcome. Thank you all for joining, supporting ourselves while supporting our communities. My name is Yewande Yoyo Odunubi, and I will be your host for this event. I'm a live program producer at Welcome Collection. My pronouns are she, her. I am a Black woman with caramel complexion and brown eyes. I have 3 nose piercings, including a septum piercing and hip-length twisted braids. Today I'm wearing a blue and yellow polo neck jumper, and I have a tall plant behind me in the background. For those not familiar with Welcome Collection, it's a free museum and library in London that explores health and being human, making connections across science, medicine, life and art. Though our building is currently closed for the time being, you can still engage with us through checking out our stories, books, and live events at welcomecollection.org. I'm excited to have you all join us for another event in the Supporting Ourselves online event series. Inspired by the Friendship Bench initiative created in Zimbabwe, which highlights listening as an act of care. Supporting Ourselves is a series of conversations between people with different life experiences who have had to find ways to support themselves and their communities during a global pandemic. As part of this, you are invited to watch our pairs of speakers as they reflect on personal care practices and support structures that they have drawn on over the last year. Today, we're grateful to have the opportunity to listen in to what we believe will be an enlightening conversation between climate justice activist Days Agaji and journalist and podcaster Natasha Littman, reflecting on their recent experiences of balancing care practices and supporting their community. Excited to lend our ears to a conversation that opens up a dialogue around navigating what care practices and support structures for self and community looks like for our speakers during this continued period of change and upheaval. So to share a little bit about our speakers before the video begins, Days Agaji is a 20-year-old climate justice activist and student. She studies history and politics at Goldsmiths University of London. In 2009, she ran for election in the EU parliamentary elections, being the youngest candidate to do so. She also has strong ties with Extinction Rebellion, and the main areas of Day's activism are regenerative cultures and intersectional environment and young political engagement and social change funding. Days has recently become a trustee at Belgrave Trust. And as you probably also saw, I had someone just come into the room behind me. Also, just to say a little bit about Natasha Littman, is a chronic illness blogger and part-time journalist from London. On her blog, you can find her interviewing people who are doing amazing things in the disability space, exploring inclusive fashion and working with experts to create practical advice about living with chronic illness. Now, I hand this space over to Days and Natasha, and I hope you all enjoy this afternoon's conversation.
Hi, I'm Days. My pronouns are she, her, or they, them. I'm a Black woman with brown hair and brown eyes. My hair's in a ponytail. I'm wearing a yellow and black tulle dress that has been seen as amazing.
It is. Hi, I'm Natasha. My pronouns are she, her. I am a very pale Jewish woman with green eyes and long-ish brown curly hair. I am sitting in front of a bookshelf full of theoretical physics books which do not belong to me.
Hi, Natasha. How have you been dealing with lockdown?
Hi, Days. It's so nice to speak with you. Honestly, aside from the global pandemic, not much has really changed in my day-to-day life. I had spent kind of cumulative many years at home, and like a lot of people with long-term health conditions, I actually found that the world became a lot more accessible when everything went online in the space of a couple of weeks. Work became more accessible, culture became more accessible, socializing became more accessible, and it just kind of opened up things for me in a way that I think I'd always wanted, but it's very sad that that was the reason that this all happened. How about you?
Yeah, definitely. It is really sad that it's kind of had to take the world to stop for it to find ways to include other people. Yeah, I've had the very stereotypical like, oh God, my life stopped all overnight kind of reaction to lockdown, and it's been difficult. It's been really hard, actually. Yeah, just I think it's mostly the jerk reaction to my life was so much about meeting people and gathering together. And then that ended, and then it kind of was this like seeing the suffering of the world as well, and something that all of us are involved in and all of us are mourning. Yeah, it was like this kind of feeling of collective grief I feel like has kind of lived on throughout all of these lockdowns. So it's been like, as someone who's quite empathetic, it's been really like, the energy has been very different over the past year.
How have you found this in terms of the work that you do being very in person and being around people? And how have you been able to kind of replicate some of those experiences in this very overused phrase, this new normal?
Yeah, like I feel like you can't really replicate it, because especially with like a lot of stuff around like the environment and like embodied feelings, it's all about feeling the energy of the room and feeling like held and protected within that. And it doesn't quite translate too well over Zoom, it still feels a bit distant. But I think it's learning about ways that we can manage and doing this. And I feel like a lot of the things like, we've tried so many different tactics of protest, because normally it's, very much body and space of you being physically in the space that's curated for protesting. But now, it's online and we have to reimagine the space. And I think that it has led to some quite creative tactics, which I think is quite interesting. Yeah, it's about like there is something about like what's the word, like innovativeness when it comes to like struggling, and it actually makes us like become more like thinking out of the box a lot more often. Have
Yeah,
you
absolutely.
kind of experience?
Um, it's very interesting, I think, because everything that I've done community wise and everything that I have been able to be part of in the last however many years has been predominantly online. So I think there are a lot of lessons that people have been learning in terms of don't just try and replicate offline methods of whatever you're doing and try and translate it exactly online, because it's not going to work. You have to, as you said, be really innovative, and thinking about how we communicate and how we speak to each other online. I feel like it's been interesting because a lot of people in disability and chronic illness communities lived online anyway. Our communication was online, our support was online. And actually, for me, over this time, I found that going offline a bit more was really beneficial for my mental health. I kind of disappeared off the internet for quite a long period of time, and trying to figure out how to create a healthy balance between trying to create content and support a community online, while also supporting myself, which I suppose is what we're here to talk about, because there is that line of how can you give so much of yourself but also look out for yourself as well. And I'd love to hear your experiences of that, both offline and online.
Yeah, it's quite difficult. I've always had a really strange relationship with online spaces, especially social media. I don't quite I don't quite work too well in those spaces. I have like a lot of anxiety around it, whether it's, the act of like being really raw and really like personal with people online, or showing too much of my life, because I feel that I'm quite a private person, but in like quite a weird way of I'm happy to talk about experiences, but to kind of like bring someone via your phone into your house, into the activities that you're taking like day in day in, like I think that I don't know, it feels kind of wrong to me. It feels uncomfortable. So I've kind of had to have that kind of weirdness of like trying to work with social media. I don't think I've been successful so far, sadly. But yeah, I think it's been a really, really strange learning curve. I think that, in all honesty, is probably good that I feel uncomfortable while doing it, because hopefully it will, promote growth. And especially I've been thinking about this a lot, like I know because of my learning disabilities, I find online spaces quite overwhelming. But in, you know, like I know that even I find protests overwhelming, and that's something that I've, you know, had to kind of like figure out ways to cope with. And I feel like if I kind of do that with the online space, there's so many people like, you know, the people with chronic illness and disabilities who can start partaking in, you know, activism and seeing activism as something that can truly be inclusive. Those are, you know, it's got me thinking quite a bit.
I could relate to what you said about how much of yourself you have to give away in online spaces and how these algorithms are built for you to do that. So if I do a post with educational material in it, I also have to post 10 to 15 Instagram stories in a day because something like 6 to 10 times the number of people are going to see the story talking about the post. And so this algorithm kind of feeds, you have to feed the algorithm in order for people to see your educational content. And when you're at home, and this is something I always struggled with, I was like, I'm not doing anything. I have nothing to share. So I'm like, here's a nice meal that we were having, or look what I'm watching now. And I feel like the other thing that's very interesting with talking about health conditions and chronic illnesses online is that you want to kind of show what the reality of your situation is, and you want to be able to build empathy and awareness of your health conditions. And to do that, you have to show the most vulnerable parts of yourself. And I'm very kind of like you, I'm very comfortable talking about these things. But at the same time, there's something that makes me really uncomfortable about having to film myself when I'm not feeling very well, to show that like I did something and then I had to recover from it and look how awful I look and how tired I am. And I don't like that. It makes me very uncomfortable. And I think for me, figuring out how I can offer the most without having to kind of sell myself on the internet has been a really interesting few years, because all of my friends who are on social media know this. Like, I've been really miserable with it, and taking time off has been really important to kind of think about what did I need when I first went online to look for things, and I try to be the me that I needed. And I think that sounds a bit up myself maybe, but I can see I can see the kind of content that I needed, and so I'm trying to make that. And trying to make things that are helpful for people, and it's more about working with experts and wider issues, and using my own personal experiences where it will make it more relatable, rather than saying I'm going to put all my life out on the internet, because I didn't enjoy it. And I suppose one of the other interesting elements of being a very online person, especially in a space where you talk very personally, is that a lot of people reach out to you. And I think that's really, really great. But I think that it can become very overwhelming when you can build a parasocial relationship. Someone really feels like they're your friend, that they know you, that they'll send you essays about their problems. And I'm not really equipped to deal with that. And I'm very empathetic, and it kind of just takes over because you really want to be there for people. And I've let things cross my boundaries way too far because I understand that people are hurting. And I'd be very curious, especially because you work more in offline spaces, kind of building relationships with people in real life versus kind of working with strangers online when they're kind of approaching you, how you find that kind of thing.
Yeah, it's so interesting to talk about that kind of like people needing help, but you also knowing that you're not able to give that help. I think yeah, it's like that big thing about boundaries of it's like, how can you help your community, but also how can you protect yourself in between that as well. I think that's, yeah, what you said was really amazing. I don't know, I had like I think it's because like when you're in, you know, physical space, normally there is like a time limit to this, and I think that's the thing that's quite different from online spaces and physical, because like online spaces, they want to talk to you, they want to contact you, they can contact you at like 3 a.m. in the morning, you know, and there's no like boundary setting. But I do feel that like in physical spaces you do have that. If the workshop's like an hour or 2 or even 3, there is that start of where they feel like they can come, and then the end of where it's like this is the end of where we can talk about this issue in this way. And if we're going to continue discussing certain parts of it, we find like proper ways of doing that fits between both of our boundaries. Like if it's like, like setting another meeting or something like that, it's less about this kind of like, this constant need for communication. And I think
And
online space.
Sorry.
Exactly. No, don't worry. Yeah, exactly. Because it is like you guys find a way that working together works for both of you, rather than online spaces that feel like, I don't know, it feels like this constant, like, everyone can have connection to you at any time. And it feels, I think maybe, like vulnerable, but not particularly in a good way either. There is such difficulty.
Yeah, it is quite overwhelming because you never know who's going to message you or how they're going to respond, because you don't have that space to have built a mutual relationship. It's people feeling like they know you, and having expectations of what you can give to them, and it's, you feel like a bad person because you want to be there and to be supportive and to be really kind and friendly. But how do you find that balance? Because you're not in that position where you can say, hi, we've actually met and we've discussed these issues mutually. And it's very interesting. And I think it's going to be interesting to see how this develops over the years, really, the longer that we have to kind of build communities online.
Yeah, and especially like, I think the kind of the weirdest part about it is, like, as I said before, like this is a time for like grief, and quite like we are all traumatized from what's happening right now. And I want to say that really frankly, because it's true. Even if people aren't feeling traumatized, there are going to be like certain, things that we carry on from this experience of living in a pandemic. And when it comes to the point, especially with, like ongoing health issues, environmental issues, economic issues, when our community needs more help, how are we going to, help each other, but also protect our own as well? I think that, I don't know, like, is there going to be that time where we might have to, start giving more than we can actually? Or is that, somewhat part of the problem? Because if everyone kind of learn how to also do some, real deep self-care, we might not be needing to hold so many people in society. But yeah, that's just the thought I'm throwing out there.
No, it's very interesting, and something that I've been thinking about in relation to that is, I think a lot of people that speak about personal experiences online, they get into it because they've been having a hard time and they've been looking for support and connection, or they have been looking to meet new people and communicate, and I don't think they get into the spaces necessarily knowing what that will turn into. And I think if you are then speaking out about, talking about your disability and how it impacts you, and talking about issues that you've had, they're very personal to you, and they're very, it's your life, and it's everything to you. And so it can be very hard to separate that out from being able to be you outside of that, because it is you, but you are also you in so many other ways. I don't know if that makes sense. But
it makes so much sense.
Yeah, I like to say that, like, I am defined by my chronic illnesses, but I'm also defined by like the hundreds of other things that make me me. And I think for a long time I almost got lost in that one part of me, and it makes sense, right? Because it feels so vital and it feels so important. So how do you find that balance between kind of the work that you do and everything else that makes days?
I think even just speaking about it, I think that, especially for me, my connection to the environment was through a lot of the experiences that I've lived through, and it's like, like certain parts of that is a part of me. Like, for example, like the first time I actually heard about, the climate crisis was through my research into air pollution and how this was affecting ethnic minorities community. Even one of the communities was my own, with an incinerator being built near schools and hospitals, you know, or my family in Nigeria being affected by like oil spills and flooding. So it kind of always had that very personal connection. And even like the way that I understand the world, I do think stems from things like my learning disabilities, where I've had to think in a different way to others to be able to like live within this world, you know. And it is this kind of like weird mix of where like the professional meets personal, but it's all kind of the same. But also, even knowing all of that, it's not really me, if you get what I mean. Because even I have this thing where like, this sounds weird, but like people that know me think I'm an introvert, but everyone else who sees me as an extrovert. I talk lots, I like speaking to people, I wear crazy clothes. But then I know that when I'm at home, I'm very much someone who likes my own company, and I actually find like enjoyment in silence. And it's this kind of weirdness of, even if they feel like they know everything about me, they don't know me, you know. But it's really hard because it's like you don't want to create a false persona online of where, you know, I am this, you know, strong Days climate activist, and then like in reality I'm constantly crying and I'm a bit of a mess, you know. And it's like, how do you show both parts without almost being overwhelming to say like, look how shit my life is? That's not really true too, but also not over glamorizing what it is. Like, especially with climate activism, everyone thinks it's news appearances and, you know, marches and all that, but a lot of the time is spent in meetings, writing strategies, emails. That's what my day is made out of. And that's not as glamorous as some of the things that, you know, people see on social media.
I can definitely relate to the extrovert thing, by the way, the extrovert but introvert thing. I talk all the time, like I'm known for talking all the time, but also I just want to be by myself and I want the world to leave me alone. So I totally get that.
It's people say it's when you're able, like, I think the extrovert is when you gather energy from yourself and kind of broadcast, and introvert is when you gather energy from others and then that energizes you. So I think that's some people make that distinction.
I think it's the other way around.
Is it the other way?
Extrovert, you get it from other people, and introvert, you need to be by yourself, I think. Yeah. But it's very, yeah, it's difficult trying to figure out how much of yourself to give, because if you don't show everything, it feels like you're being inauthentic. I don't think it's possible to be 100% authentic online unless you live stream your life. But even then, I remember we did The Handmaid's Tale at school, and there was something in the back that really, or in one of the conversations that we had about it, that really stuck with me. That was, even the act of writing a diary, you're kind of writing a diary maybe knowing that someone's going to read it one day, and that inherently is going to change how you write your diary. And that has always stuck with me. And it's made me hyper aware of writing a diary, because I think as soon as we're aware that something that we're saying is going to be consumed, we're going to change it. We change how we speak in conversations with people one-on-one, that if we're then putting things online. And I think there are a lot of norms in every different community, and you kind of have an awareness of how people are going to respond. So I think in disclaimers, I'm like, am I disclaimering this enough so that people don't feel invalidated by me talking about my own experience? And that's a very weird thing to have to think about sometimes, because sometimes you just want to say, like, this is my experience, and my experience is my experience. And I'm not saying that your experience is going to be like my experience. That would be ridiculous. But if I don't disclaimer it, people get very angry. So it's trying to figure out how to have these conversations, be as authentic as possible, but also be aware of the space that these conversations are happening. And I think that can be a weird line to try and walk sometimes.
Yeah, definitely. Like, yeah, I get what you mean by that kind of like weirdness of making sure that there's more than one like visual like interpretation of what you're saying. And I think even like, so I study history, and it's only when you get to university level they tell you that there is no such thing as fact in history. And it's like, I feel like this should be taught when people are really young, where it's like, there is no such thing as this is exactly what it happened, and there's no debate over it. There is so much like, you know, like debate and different perceptions of the same event. And I think this is kind of, especially when you're talking about personal experience, like, you know, I know that especially when I talk about young people and them finding out about the climate activism and the state that the climate's in, I see it as like people go two ways, or one of two ways at least. Either you go, yeah, where's my nearest environmental club? I'm going to start joining, I'm going to do something, and you're right into action. Or you become so overwhelmed where you end up just ignoring it or denying it or pushing away from it in some way. And even though it may be the same situation of, you know, like I know there are people who, when I went to my first XR meeting, we left there hearing the same information but having two different reactions to it. Mine was, you know, can I get a full-time job here? And other people's was like, this is the reality that I'm faced with and this is too much. So there is that kind of like nuance, and I think that should be also be allowed, you know, as in like and accepted, and understand that, you know, what, you know, I'm saying in my experiences isn't gospel for everyone, you know. And even as being a Black woman in London, I know my experience of Black women in London with a voice that's very, you know, white passing, is not the same as majority of Black women in London. And we have to kind of talk about that there is different perceptions and understandings of situations. And I don't feel like the online space quite allows for that, because, you know, if you say this is my thing, someone has a different, you know, idea. They go, you're a liar. And there isn't, I think it is because there's such like an unbalance of like power of sharing, if you know what I mean. So it's like if you have like a really big influencer saying this is my experience of this, but you only have a comment of like, you know, maybe like 200 words to reply and say what you feel, you know. And there is that kind of like imbalance within the community of who holds the power of sharing and talking, you know, about their experiences. And I do think that, I don't know, at least what I see, like a lot of the attacks are mostly from helplessness, of feeling like their experience can't be validated in the same way.
I think this is something that's been really interesting in the chronic illness community, and it's a topic that comes up a lot about kind of support groups on Facebook especially. So I found them incredibly harmful and incredibly damaging to my mental health, because I kind of toddle on in at 21 and was like, okay, how do I live? Tell me everything. Your life is going to be over. This is awful. Oh, you're not that bad if you can do this. I can't do da-da-da-da-da-da. And it was only as I got older, with hindsight, that I realized how hurt the people saying that were. And recognizing that people weren't able to get the support that they need, especially the older people. And it's a challenging space, because I think if you've got boundaries being crossed and that's slightly different. That's when like people are coming unsolicited to you. I think it's very challenging to kind of think about how to be as respectful and kind and empathetic, but also saying, I do not deserve to have your insecurity mean that you treat me badly. And I've been very lucky, I've not had much of it, but I think at the same time, everyone I know who has any form of platform is constantly scared. They are like, we have these conversations behind the scenes, and it can be, you know, it can be people who reach out to you for help, but then I had a girl become completely obsessed with me, and that sounded like something from Mean Girls, and I didn't mean it that way, but it became overwhelming. And when I tried to say, I'm really sorry, you can't message me anymore, it actually blew the whole thing up. So it's, how can you kind of create those boundaries for yourself? And that's where I think the parasocial relationship can come back into the conversation, because I think I think this is where our work is very different, because you are mostly communicating with people in real life and you're building mutual connections. Whereas for me, I do build a lot of mutual connections, but a lot of it is also unsolicited strangers who think they know me and want certain things. And a lot of the time, I would say 99% of the time, it's fine. But how do you try very hard not to kind of create that false sense of friendship, which is what social media is driven off of, right? Like that is the point. You see people with huge accounts talking about their friends and their loves and all of that. So for example, I probably slip up every now and then, but like I'll be like, hi, but I won't be like, hi friends, because I don't know you. And it's very, I think, especially now because people are craving this connection, it's very easy to kind of try and build or force relationships with people that you don't really know. And what does that do to individuals? So I have a friend who's just started posting about her health, and, you know, she's been getting these messages and feeling very overwhelmed and not knowing what to do. And it's very hard when you want to be there and be really supportive because you understand. But also, like, how do you protect yourself? Because you're just one person who is not a therapist. So kind of where really, so where can that line be if you have to do a lot of your work predominantly online?
Yeah, definitely. I do think that, especially when you were talking about this kind of like, I'll one up you, my struggle is so much worse. I've had that like my whole life because, you know, like people go, like when I go, yeah, I have learning disabilities, people look at me like, really? Are you sure about that? You know, you seem fine. Or even like, I remember like one of the most horrifying experiences of my life, especially finding out, like I always knew I was a bit slow to the party, in all honesty. I couldn't read till I was around 11, 12. My first like cover to cover book was The Fault in Our Stars in like 2015. Like that's how much like I've struggled with my dyslexia and dyspraxia and ADHD. And I was in college at this time, and someone heard that people who have dyslexia have extra time. This person decided to go, oh, I have dyslexia. And I just started crying because that was how they perceived people, but not realizing that that wasn't the case, you know. And it was this kind of like a blindness to like the sensitivities around someone who does have like find it difficult to exist in a world that was not created for them. And I feel like online spaces take in mind the sensitivity, but also doesn't actually act upon it. And this is when you get the nasty attacks and not really understanding that there are these boundaries that shouldn't be crossed that are so often. And I feel that there is something to be said about like being able to talk openly about, especially things like health conditions, which are extremely personal, but also, you know, like also not, I don't know, I have like a weird thing about like not really wanting to feel like anyone else's problem, which is kind of, I think it is like my own probably internal wounding of like, my mom's always been like, yeah, we're strong, independent women, you can do it yourself. And I've always had that very much like, I am my own best friend, I'm fine. But where is it like to the point of where it's like a healthy amount of saying I can take care of myself and I can practice self-care, but also how do you accept like community help, but in a positive way? And I don't think that we've quite mastered the lines around those kind of issues.
And actually, I think that really speaks to a big issue that you see in the chronic illness community with unsolicited advice when it comes from a really good place. And I think, you know, more than the negative sides of attacks and hatred, I would say that there is a big challenge around people who, again, might see you as a friend and want to be really supportive and be reaching out because they want to help. And it's so kind and it's so great. But I think it's then figuring out how do you have boundaries about that, saying, I have a support network. I'm very lucky. I have a support network in real life and I have made friends on social media. But it's quite weird because it's like, who do you can't decide who you become friends with on social media, but you do just become friends with some people and some people you just don't. And finding ways to get that balance, because, you know, sometimes people will reach out and say, have you tried this? And I just shut down now. I'm like, nope. Whereas if somebody said to me, oh, hey, I saw you posting about this, would you mind if I shared something with you, I would probably say yes. And I think a lot of it is it's just like asking me first. I think social media takes away some of the empathy that we would have when talking to each other in real life. You wouldn't go up to a stranger in the street and say, "Hey, have you tried that?" I mean, occasionally, yes, especially if you're out in the quality and people would. Yeah. But I think a lot of being mindful of how we interact with each other on social media is just thinking like, how would I want someone to interact with me? How can I be kind and empathetic and realize that they're a real person and that I don't actually know them? And have they asked for it? Have they asked for my opinion? First, have they asked for this? Is it in a space where this has been asked for? Or can I ask them first? And I think just being open to saying, I recognize that they are individuals with agency, and that what I think of them is not the most important thing in the world, and that I have a responsibility to recognize that they probably feel the same way that I do about a lot of things, and a lot of things that they don't. And I think actually finding ways to disconnect and find kind of common humanity in everybody has been really important. And I think there is a challenge, especially now. This is something the chronic illness community has faced for a very long time, is if you can't communicate with people in real life, you do go online. And especially, I don't live alone anymore. It was so hard living alone and being very isolated. But I understand that need to obsessively be online and to be talking to people and have that connection, because we don't have it in real life. And I'd be curious, since you hate social media, how you're able to find that balance between getting the communication and the support that you need at the moment without having to kind of get into kind of wider social media spaces that you don't feel very comfortable with.
Yeah, to be honest, like I've been on my own for around 2 months now. When my flatmate, she went home, so I don't know, it's been difficult, and I'm not gonna lie and say it's been like I've been making sourdough every day and feeling really happy, because that's not the truth. I've had ups and downs, and yeah, I think it is quite hard, especially in this time, to find a way to relate when I find social media quite, like bombarding. But I don't know, I normally try and cap my hours, especially when it comes to communications. Like, I only open like my requests once a week. I have like a really allotted time for when I even answer my friends. So you have to catch me between those hours, or, like saying, oh, do you want a Zoom call? What time would be comfortable for you? And having that conversation of creating a boundary around the time that we can spend together, especially when now it's like people, especially like during the first half of lockdown, where people are like, you've got nothing to do, you've got no excuse. It was very much like, oh God, now I feel like I have to like almost like performatively socialize with everyone. Even people who I don't particularly feel close to, or I feel like I don't really have that very strong connection to. So I think it's been, it's been quite difficult to try and find the balance. But I feel like I'm quite lucky in the sense that I feel quite self-aware of when I'm in a good place to be able to talk to people, and when I don't feel like I can talk to people, and being able to like explain that as well. I've had depression for around 3 years now, and when it does come to the point of like when I'm in an episode, or I feel like I feel a bit like unhinged, and I feel like my energy and what I bring would end up making someone else feel uncomfortable or helpless because they can't help me. I find ways that I reach out for professional advice. I make sure that I contact my therapist, and there is that kind of like self-awareness of where you have to kind of like be a bit like hard on yourself and say like, I know what I need, but who can actually adequately give this to me, and finding that person who can is I think the really like sweet spot.
Yeah, I'll just do a quick time flag. We have, oh gosh, I'm really bad at maths. We have a couple of minutes left. say 3.5 minutes left. I think that's true. I've been setting as much as possible. I've been trying to put my phone away at night and like literally hiding it. And if I see it, I'll pick it up. And being really aware of just what I want from the internet. And I think it's very hard because I built my whole career on the internet and I kind of owe it everything. But I also have a love-hate relationship with it where I need it and I get so much from it, but it also makes me really miserable in so many ways. And thinking about how can I, as you said, set those boundaries and figure out the other things that I can kind of find a balance with. And it feels more important now than ever, especially when I have people in my real life that I have to support so much more than I've ever had to, that has become imperative. I'd be curious, kind of, since we only have a few minutes left, just any kind of self-care final thoughts that you have.
I think what you've just said is it's really important, being able to find that boundary around, you know, what's going on, especially in time like this. I think especially when I talk about self-care, it's always something that's quite personal, and I'm not talking about self-care like face mask Mondays, like that that is not the self-care I'm talking about. I'm talking about this like really radical self-care of understanding yourself, understanding what part you play within your community, within your society, and what healthy parts of you that you feel like you can share, but also what parts of you that you feel aren't so healthy, and what needs do you need to sort that out, whether that's the resources or your allies, and figuring this out so when you come into a community space you can bring, you know, your best foot forward. And I think, at least for me, I know that it's really sitting with myself and thinking about what I'm bringing at any given moment. Like I do a lot of like work in journaling and stuff, because I know that helps me put down my thoughts and think of it more, but also it helps me kind of provide a way into my brain for others. And, you know, like you said about the journal, like weirdly enough, I actually write my journal to never be read, and I don't reread my journal ever, which some of my friends find quite strange. But also there has been times of where I've been like, actually, I think, you know, this journal from this particular point in my life has led, you know, will lead my therapist to understand me a bit more, you know, and it's like surrendering that part over to someone else who can give you help. And I think it is just that real vivid self-awareness for when you feel strong, but also when you don't feel as strong and when you require assistance.
I love that. I love all of that. I think it's very true. And I think the only thing that I'll add is the way that we respond to things in the online space is something to really reflect on. So why did something make you upset? Why did something make you angry? Why were you finding this challenging? Why did this make you really happy? Kind of thinking about those things and how we react to external things coming to us is also part of that reflection.
Especially with like my learning disabilities, I understand that certain things can make me feel really like triggered, and I've had to kind of have awareness over that, because I feel like, you know, like I've always said, I know some people don't agree with me, but like learning disabilities and having things that trigger you doesn't mean that you should bring this out onto other people. You know, it means that you should be self-aware. And there are times, like, you know, my boyfriend would say something or do something that I find particularly triggering, and I like lash out, but then I have to say, that's not me being my best self, and I need to apologize for this and explain what's happened, but also don't use that as an excuse, you know. And I've had to kind of do that throughout my whole life, you know, like even, I don't know, going to the grocery shop I find really stimulating and overstimulating, and there's times of where someone would do something I'm like but it's not because, you know, because of what they did, it's because of the circumstances I found myself in. And I think it's just making sure that that awareness is brought, but also like not being harsh on yourself either, because like we all make mistakes, and it's learning how to grow from that.
I think on those very wise words, I think we're at our time, unfortunately. I really love talking with you.
You too.
Wow. Still taking that in. Thank you to Days and Natasha for sharing your reflections with us. It was really, really rich, a lot to take in there. And I still personally, I know that I want to reflect on, and I'm sure many of you feel the same. I think we've got about 5-10 minutes left. So to close the event, I just want to take this opportunity to invite Days and Natasha back on screen, this time live, to share some final thoughts on their conversation. I know they've been in the live chat following and commenting along with us. Hello, Days and Natasha. Nice to see you both again.
You too.
It was really just, I know I've said this earlier on, but it just was really a privilege to be able to kind of listen into your conversation and hear you both and how you've been navigating this time. For me, definitely, I felt it was a special conversation with a lot of nuanced points made, and also just kind of really reflecting on how it's really great to hear such an honest conversation that I know sometimes we don't get to hear in a public forum. So thank you both once again. So I just kind of want to just open up the floor a little bit. So listening back, is there anything that stood out for you or any perspectives or threads in the live chat that you want to speak towards? Maybe I'll start with Natasha first, if that's okay.
Sure. I think something that Dave said in the chat actually about our difference of experience between kind of predominantly existing online and predominantly existing offline. And then what that means now that there's been this really big influx of people having to suddenly figure out how to exist on online spaces. And I think it is something that we are going to be struggling with over the next few years and probably for the rest of my life, I suppose, especially depending on how the technology will change, because I think it is so easy to get swept up and in the positives and the negatives, and just reflecting on what we want and need, but also what we can bring to it, is something that I've been reflecting on a lot, and kind of listening to Days talking about how different it is just being offline with people kind of makes you reflect, because usually when I go out in public I always apologize to people afterwards. I was like, I talk too much, I was excited, I was weird, sorry, because I'm mostly communicating with people online, and I think it's trying to find a balance between those two extremes, because we are dependent on the internet. There's no two ways about it. So how can we figure out how to navigate all of this together, really?
Yeah, I mean, that's really interesting. Thank you for sharing that. And Days, I kind of also want to give you the floor to also share any thoughts, but also maybe in addition to what Natasha has said.
Yeah, definitely. I feel like after having that conversation with Natasha, I started thinking about more about my own relationship with social media. Because I've also been like a jerk reaction, oh, I hate it, don't want to use it. But seeing like the way that Natasha has created a community online with people who understand her and people that she feels that she can help, has made me almost think about how best I can start learning how to build boundaries around online spaces to make a space that feels quite comfortable for me. And also in the chat talking about how we can start becoming more accessible to a lot more people. I think that's something that's really important and quite a big conversation that all of us need to start having.
And also, I'll just say, sorry, so a big thank you to the team at Wellcome for making this event so accessible. I think for both of us, I saw in the chat, this is the most accessible event that we've been part of, and we could see in the lead up to this the hard work that you guys were doing, and it's really cool to see.
Thank you. And for me and the team, just there, thank you both for being so open and honest with us, to allow us to work with you to kind of put this space together. And just to kind of say, listening to you talk, Days, I know you mentioned this word about community and the community that Natasha's built online, and just kind of following the chat. Natasha, you brought a really interesting point that kind of struck a chord with me about unpacking the word communities, which can often be used to group people together who may share some commonalities or intersections, but not necessarily be in community with each other. And I just wondered if you would be okay with just expanding on that a little bit, because I thought it was just really interesting.
Yeah, thank you. I've been quite obsessed with this recently. Actually, I've been thinking about it a lot because um, there are a lot of really great benefits to being part of online communities, but often the reason someone will join a Facebook for their particular disability, or a Facebook group, or um, you know, I've been getting into kind of Jewish community things recently, is also recognizing that beyond being disabled or being Jewish, I have hundreds of other things that make me me, right? And so just because someone else also fits into that one thing that I also happen to have, it doesn't mean that we are going to agree on everything. It doesn't mean our experiences are going to be the same. Sorry. And it doesn't mean that that particular community space is going to be a good fit for me. And I think I think it can sometimes push people away from otherwise helpful things, or thinking about the way we want to interact with any kind of community. And I think just like in real life, we're all people, there's always going to be people that we do not get on with. That's just a fact of life. There's going to be people that we thingy up against. Sorry, my brain's not very good today. That we crash up against, and that is completely normal. So why are we holding online spaces to even higher standards? And maybe just recognizing that like we're going to have a point of difference with some people, or maybe this particular community group isn't right for us, but this one might be. And everything that I do kind of in my real life, instead of trying to find like this big community to be part of, I like find individuals and we make our own little groups, because we know what we want and we can offer and we need from each other. And for me, that's been the most exciting and mentally healthy, I think.
Days, do you have anything to add on that, or anything that you would like to share around that?
Yeah, definitely. I feel that I think the beauty of communities is there's something that brings you all together. Like I know for me, a lot of it is around the climate crisis, which is kind of a sad topic to be brought around, meeting lots of people. But I think especially when it comes to community and holding community spaces, it's all about this like real respect for ourselves and one another. And I think this is kind of where like the allowing of different opinions to kind of flow is where, it's like the balance of we can have different opinions as long as we remember to respect each other while we're sharing them. And I think even, in real life, it's practiced far more than online spaces. And I think that's something that people need to bring with them when they're online. Say, am I respecting myself in the way I'm conducting myself? Am I respecting the people who are virtually around me? And would I be able to, act the way that I am online? Why do I think it's acceptable to do one in one another? So I think there is something about like learning how to be respectful of one another on online spaces.
Thank you both. And I'm just kind of acknowledging the time that fortunately we don't have that much time to continue, but there's so much that you said in those like last 2 points and the whole chat. So I think there's a lot for us to digest. I think also a really strong note to close on when thinking about community and how we engage with each other and being respectful and attentive to that. So thank you both again for letting us hold space with you, and thank you everybody for spending this last hour with us. We hope you enjoyed the conversation. Please do stay connected to Welcome and our upcoming future programs. There will be more to experience in the couple of coming months. So please keep your eyes locked onto the website, welcomecollection.org, for more future updates. So once again, thank you to Days, Natasha, StageText, and everybody for holding space together. And I hope you all have a great rest of your day. Take care.
Thank you.
Thank you.